It was too loud in the room for thoughts to make sense. Bass vibrating through the floorboards, laughter bouncing off the walls, beer fizzing in half-crushed red cups. I sat on the couch, squeezed between a half-drunk girl quoting memes and Logan, who smelled like pine soap and tequila. Then it happened. I froze when I felt his hand. It wasn't on my shoulder or my back, places where Logan's casual, friendly touches usually landed. No, this was different. His fingers brushed my thigh, low, slow, familiar in a way it shouldn't have been. A place I'd never let anyone touch. Not like that, not casually, not him. My whole body tensed like a drawn wire. The room didn't stop moving, but I did. I glanced sideways. Logan kept laughing with someone across the room, his voice light, careless. But his hand didn't move. I couldn't breathe. Was that an accident? Was he just reaching for something and his fingers landed there by mistake? Did he mean to do that? God. Did I want him to? My throat tightened. I couldn't tell if it was the heat of the crowd or the rush of blood to my face, but everything suddenly felt too much. My skin buzzed with static. I didn't move his hand, didn't say anything. I just stared at the floor while a war erupted in my head, because this wasn't just any hand. It was Logan's, my best friend. My maybe straight, maybe not, impossible to read best friend. The guy who once told me I was the only person who really knew him. The guy whose hoodie I still kept in the back of my closet like a secret I didn't know how to admit out loud. His fingers twitched slightly, like he realized where they were and was daring me to react. I didn't. I sat there like a goddamn statue, pretending not to notice while my heart threatened to climb out of my throat. That night changed everything, but not in the way I expected. We met on move-in day, freshman year. I was the last one to arrive, sweaty, irritable, lugging a suitcase with one busted wheel and a backpack that left a red dent across my shoulder. I walked into the dorm room expecting awkward silence and forced small talk. What I got instead was Logan, sitting cross-legged on his bed, eating Doritos straight from the bag and blasting indie pop from a tiny speaker like he already owned the place. "Eli, right?" he said, without even looking up from his phone. I snagged the bed near the window. "Hope that's cool." I blinked, still half in the hallway. "Sure. Sweet." He grinned. "We're gonna be best friends." I didn't know whether to laugh or run. Logan was a lot. He was charming in that messy, chaotic way that only people who've never been told no too harshly can be. Tall, athletic, with eyes like he'd stolen them from a movie poster. He was always touching people, clapping backs, ruffling, hair draping his arm over your shoulder like it belonged there. I was not like that. Guarded, cynical, sharp-edged in all the wrong places. I'd built walls so high around myself, even I had trouble seeing over them. Being gay in high school had meant surviving by being invisible, and I'd gotten really good at it. Logan was the opposite of invisible. He dragged me into his orbit before I had the chance to resist. Within a week, we were eating ramen on the floor at 2 a.m., watching terrible horror movies and ranking which professors might secretly be serial killers. We'd stay up talking about everything: family, music, fears, dreams, things we couldn't say out loud during the day. He told me once that he hated how his dad only cared about football stats and scholarships. I told him I hated how I couldn't look in the mirror without flinching. He didn't flinch at that. He just nodded, like he understood. That first year blurred. Classes came and went. We got drunk, got dumped, pulled all-nighters. I started, waiting for his texts, noticing when he didn't laugh at someone else's jokes, feeling lighter when he smiled at me, and somewhere in the middle of all that, I realized I was in love with him. Of course, I didn't say that. I buried it deep. So deep, I convinced myself it didn't exist. Logan flirted with girls constantly. Dated them even. They orbited him like he was gravity, and I sat just outside the pull pretending I was content with friendship, pretending it didn't make me want to tear something apart every time he walked into our room smelling like someone else's perfume. But he also did things that didn't make sense, like the time he got weirdly quiet when I mentioned going on a Tinder date with a guy. Or how he'd sometimes lie on my bed instead of his own when we watched movies. Or how after a rough night he'd grab my wrist, not my hand, just the wrist, and hold it like he needed proof I was real. I told myself it didn't mean anything. He was just tactile. That's how he was, friendly, affectionate, straight, right? One night, after a party, we were walking back to the dorm, drunk and laughing too loudly. It was snowing, soft and quiet, and I slipped on the sidewalk. He caught me, pulled me close, and for a second, we just stood there, his hands on my waist, his breath clouding against mine in the cold. I looked up. He looked down. And then he let go too fast and laughed it off like it was nothing. So I did too. Because what else could I do? We never talked about it, about any of it. I kept the feelings buried beneath jokes and sarcasm and that familiar ache in my chest that came from being close to someone you knew you could never have. That's how it always was with Logan. Close, enough to touch, never close enough to hold. So when his hand brushed my thigh that night at the party, so casual, so not casual, part of me shattered. Because after all that time, after everything we didn't say, maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been imagining it all along. The morning after the party, I woke up with a hangover and one memory burning like a neon sign behind my eyes. His hand, on my thigh, lingering. I kept replaying it like a scene from a movie I didn't want to admit I was starring in. Every detail, looped with cruel clarity. The way his pinky shifted slightly, the way his breath caught when our eyes met, the way he didn't apologize. He just kept talking, laughing, acting like nothing had happened. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was an accident. But then why did it feel like a secret trying to claw its way out? That day, I watched him more closely. And the worst part was, I started noticing things I hadn't let myself see before. The way Logan's gaze lingered a second too long when I took off my hoodie. The way he'd lean in during conversation like whatever I was saying mattered more than anything else in the world. How he'd touch my shoulder, my knee, my wrist. Always casual, always friendly. But now, every touch sparked something electric under my skin. And then, there was the nickname. "Morning, pretty boy," he said 2 days later, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter, like he hadn't just turned my world upside down. "Don't call me that," I muttered, too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "You are." I didn't have an answer. Not one I was ready to say out loud. The nickname stuck. He'd drop it into conversation like it was a joke, like I was just overthinking it. Maybe I was. I had a habit of spinning webs from nothing, but Logan wasn't helping. He was feeding it. One night, a week after the party, we were back in our dorm room watching some old cult horror flick, the kind with awful effects and worse acting. I was sprawled on my bed, half covered in a blanket, and he was sitting on the floor, leaning against the side of the mattress. Halfway through the movie, he stood up and flopped next to me way too close, his thigh brushing mine. He didn't look at me, just kept watching the screen. My heart started doing that traitorous thing again. And then slowly, like a scene, scripted in a dream, he turned his head. I felt it before I saw it. The shift in the air, the weight of his gaze. I looked over and he was watching me, not the movie, me. My breath caught. He leaned in. I didn't move. His face was inches from mine, warm, familiar, terrifying. And then I pulled back, just an inch, enough to break it. His expression flickered. Surprise, then something softer, something almost like hurt. And then the moment shattered. "Damn," he said, smirking. "Didn't mean to scare you. Thought there was a bug on your cheek." I blinked. "Seriously?" He laughed. "You're way too jumpy, pretty boy." I rolled my eyes and turned back to the movie, heart slamming in my chest, but neither of us laughed the same after that. The air between us had cracked, and no amount of jokes could seal it shut again. The silence had a new shape now, tense, taut, like a string stretched too tight. He started watching me differently. Or maybe I just started noticing. Maybe I was projecting. Maybe I was desperate. I started remembering things, old memories, old touches. Like the time we'd fallen asleep on the couch freshman year and I'd woken up with his head on my shoulder, his arm draped across my chest. Or the way he once said, "If I were into guys, you'd be my type," with a grin that didn't quite meet his eyes. I'd laughed it off, pretended it didn't mean anything. But what if it had? What if all the signals had been there from the beginning and I'd just been too afraid to see them? That thought kept me up at night. Because if he did like me, if Logan liked me, then what the hell had we been doing all this time? Dancing around something real while I played it safe, too scared to risk breaking the only relationship that ever felt like home? Or worse, what if I was reading into it now because I wanted it to be real? What if I was just some sad, closeted cliché falling for the one guy who'd never want me back? Every day that passed, the tension coiled tighter. His touches were softer, longer. His jokes were flirtier. He started texting me more, even when we were in the same room. Little things, inside jokes, memes followed by heart emojis. And the nickname, God, the nickname, never went away. And every night I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same question over and over again. What are we doing? Because whatever this was, it wasn't friendship anymore. Not really. It happened on a Friday night. The kind of night where the drinks come easy and the silences feel louder than usual. We were in Logan's apartment, just the two of us. The others had gone out, but we stayed in, claiming we were too tired to party. Truth was, I couldn't keep pretending. Everything was normal. Not after weeks of tension, of stolen glances and accidental touches, of almost kisses and that goddamn nickname. We'd each had a couple of beers. I was on the floor, legs stretched out. He was on the couch behind me, fiddling with a bottle. Cap, his knee brushing my back like always. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around, voice low. "Why did you touch me like that at the party?" He stilled. Didn't say anything. The silence stretched between us, thick and choking. I stood up. My hands were shaking. "You don't get to just pretend that didn't happen. You don't get to mess with me like that, Logan." "I wasn't—" His voice cracked. He looked up at me, his face suddenly stripped of all the swagger and charm. "I wasn't messing with you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Then what the hell were you doing?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Trying to tell you something. By touching me without saying anything? By flirting like it's a joke? You can't just—" I stopped myself. My chest hurt. "You can't do that to me." I didn't know how else to say it. He said quietly. "I was scared." "Of what?" I asked. "Of me? Of losing you." That shut me up. He stood and stepped closer. "I've been trying to tell you for years, Eli, but I didn't know if I was allowed to." I blinked. "Allowed?" He exhaled hard. "I'm bi. I've known since high school, but I never talked about it. Not with anyone. And with you, it's always been different. I thought if I said it out loud, I'd ruin us." His voice trembled, and for the first time he looked afraid. "I didn't mean for that night to happen like that," he said, but I panicked. I thought maybe you felt the same and I just— He broke off. And I did too. The tears came out of nowhere, hot, sudden, humiliating. I turned away, pressing my sleeve to my face. "Eli?" His voice was soft. I shook my head. "You don't get it." "Then help me." I laughed through the tears. "I didn't think people like you chose people like me." "People like me?" he echoed. "Yeah," I snapped. "Golden boy. Straight passing. Effortless. You walk into a room and everyone gravitates toward you. And me? I've spent my whole life trying to not be noticed, trying to survive. I looked at him then, and he looked broken. I buried this, I said. I buried you, because I thought if I let myself feel anything, it'd destroy everything. He stepped closer. You didn't destroy anything. I did. There was silence, thick and aching. Then Logan said, I don't care if it takes time, if you need space, but I need you to know. I'm not playing a game. I've been in love with you for years, and I'm done pretending that's not true. It hit me like a wave, equal parts relief and grief, because I'd wanted this for so long, but never let myself believe I could have it. I took a shaky breath. You're serious? He nodded, eyes never leaving mine. Dead serious. I wiped my face and let out a laugh that was more sob than anything else. Well, I said hoarsely, you sure took your time. He smiled, gentle and a little nervous. Can I hug you? I nodded, and when his arms wrapped around me, I realized I'd been waiting for this moment for years. Only now. I didn't have to wait anymore. The apartment had gone still. After the tears, the confessions, and the years of tension finally snapping like overdrawn string, all that remained was a deep, humming quiet. Logan and I sat shoulder to shoulder on the couch, legs barely touching, the space between us fragile. Like something sacred had just begun, and neither of us wanted to be the first to break it. He rubbed the back of his neck. About that night, at the party, I looked at him. He swallowed. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I shouldn't have touched you like that without saying anything. I'm sorry. There was no defensiveness in his voice, just sincerity, regret. I nodded slowly. I froze, not because I didn't want it, I just didn't know if it was real, he offered, quietly. I exhaled. Yeah, and I didn't trust myself to believe it was. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't hurt. Not anymore. Can I ask you something? He said finally. I tilted my head. Yeah. What do you want, Eli? From me? From this? That? Question struck deeper than I expected. I'd spent so long convincing myself I couldn't have him. I never let myself imagine what it would look like if I could. What it would feel like to be wanted in return. I hesitated, then laughed softly. I want to stop pretending. I'm not in love with you. His face lit up. Not flashy, not showy. Just soft. Honest. His eyes crinkled like he didn't know whether to smile or cry. Good, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Because I've been in love with you since the night you made fun of me for crying at that stupid Pixar movie. You did cry, I said. I had allergies, he deadpanned. We both laughed, and something inside me finally unknotted. He turned toward me, gaze steady. Can I kiss you, if you want? I didn't speak right away. I just nodded. And then he leaned in, slow, careful, as if giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. His lips met mine with a softness that felt like a question. I answered by moving closer, pressing into him, my hand reaching for the side of his neck. The kiss deepened, not rushed, not messy, just full of history, of unsaid words, of years of closeness straining at the seams. It was a quiet explosion. One that rewrote everything I thought I knew about myself, about him, about love, and in that moment, I felt it all. Seen. Real. Wanted. Like maybe, for the first time, I was home. The kiss didn't magically fix everything. For a little while, it felt like it had. We were tangled in that early haze, furtive smiles, long texts, secret hand brushes under the table. The world felt quieter when we were alone, more colorful, like something had unlocked. But outside that bubble, life kept marching forward, and we hadn't figured out how to move with it. We didn't tell anyone, not because we were ashamed, at least that's what we told ourselves, but because we didn't know how. What would we even say? Hey, we're roommates slash best friends slash something else now. Surprise! It was easier to keep it between us, at first. But I started to unravel in the silence. I overanalyzed everything. If he didn't text me back in 5 minutes, I spiraled. If he laughed too hard at someone else's joke, my stomach clenched. Every little thing became a test, I thought. I was failing. Worse, I hated myself for it. I hated that even in the most tender moments, I still flinched inside. That I'd look at Logan, lying next to me in bed, and wonder, how long until he realizes he could have someone easier? Someone not carrying years of self-doubt like a second spine. Logan was patient, mostly. But I knew he felt it too. The tension. I tried to hide but couldn't. The way I sometimes pulled back when he touched me in public. The way I hesitated before holding his hand, even when no one was around. One night, it all came out. We were sitting on the roof of our building, wrapped, in blankets looking out over the city. It should have been peaceful. But my brain was a storm. I asked it like I didn't mean it, like I wasn't setting off a bomb. Do you ever wish I were a girl? Logan blinked. What? You know, would it just be easier if I were a girl? Less complicated? He pulled away from me, slowly. Where the hell is this coming from? I shrugged, trying to play it off. You've dated women your whole life. Maybe I'm just a curiosity. That's not fair, he said sharply. You think this is just some experiment for me? I looked down. I don't know what to think. He stood up, his voice rising. I've done everything I can to show you I'm serious. I came out to you. I told you how I felt. I asked for your consent every step of the way, and you're still acting like I'm just waiting to leave. I'm not acting, I snapped. This is how I am. I don't know how to believe someone could actually want me, especially someone like you. Logan's face softened, but the hurt in his eyes didn't fade. So, you don't trust me. I don't trust me, I said. I'm the problem. He didn't speak. For a long time, he just stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched at his sides. I don't know if I can keep doing this, he said finally. Not if you're going to keep pushing me away. My heart cracked. He left that night without another word. The days that followed felt like drowning. We didn't text. He didn't come home. I stared at the door like it might open on its own. I barely slept. I replayed the argument 100 times, trying to find the moment it tipped over the edge. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was how much I missed. Him being in the world with me. His laugh, his stupid morning coffee hum, the way he'd throw a blanket over me without asking. I missed being seen. I missed not feeling alone in my head. And for the first time, I realized something. If I wanted this, us, to work, I had to stop waiting for him to fix all the broken parts of me. I had to show up too, even if it scared me, especially if it scared me. It was raining the night Logan came back, not the soft cinematic drizzle you see in indie films. No, it was a full downpour. Angry clouds, wild thunder, the kind of rain that makes everything else go quiet. I was curled up on the couch, hoodie pulled over my head, watching some mindless sitcom I wasn't really seeing. My phone sat untouched, on the coffee table, lighting up with notifications I ignored. Then, 3 sharp knocks at the door. I froze. Half of me thought I was imagining it. The other half was already running. I opened the door, and there he was, soaked, hair dripping into his eyes, hoodie clinging to his skin, his breath heavy like he'd run the whole way. "Logan." "I couldn't stay away," he blurted, cutting me off. "I tried. I thought maybe you needed space. Maybe I should give it time, but I can't. I don't care if it's messy or complicated or terrifying. I need you, Eli." He stepped into the doorway, eyes fierce. "Loving you scared the hell out of me. Still does. But you know what? You made me braver. You made me want things I never let myself believe I could have. Real things. Messy things. You." I stood there, stunned, heart in my throat. Rainwater dripped from his hoodie onto the floor, but he didn't flinch. "You think I don't know how hard it is for you to trust this? I do, and I still chose it. I choose you." Over and over. I felt the tears before I registered them. "I'm scared," I admitted, voice trembling. "Every time I let someone in, it ends with them walking away." He stepped closer, soaking wet and glowing somehow. "Then let me be the one who doesn't." The silence that followed felt holy. "I'm not perfect," I whispered. "I overthink everything. I get weird. I shut down." "I know," he said, "and I still love you." The words landed like thunder. I breathed in, sharp and painful, like my lungs had been locked for days. "I don't want to lose you," I said. "You won't," he replied, stepping close enough that our foreheads touched. "I'm here. You were always worth the risk." And then he kissed me. It wasn't tentative this time. It wasn't afraid. It was hungry, grateful, desperate. Our hands fumbled over each other, his wet hoodie against my dry shirt, the cold of his skin meeting the heat of mine. His lips crashed into mine like a homecoming, like a promise, like every unspoken thing finally breaking loose. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and trembling, he looked at me like he was memorizing everything. "Come, inside," I said, voice rough. He smiled. "Only if I never have to leave again." And I knew he wouldn't. 3 months later, we weren't a secret anymore. We told our friends over coffee, drinks, random Tuesday hangouts. Some were shocked. Some just grinned like they'd known all along. A few pulled back, unsure how to react, but Logan squeezed my hand every time, and I didn't flinch like I used to. We got used to the looks, the curiosity. We even started holding hands in public timidly at first. Me checking over my shoulder, him giving me that reassuring smile he always had in his back pocket. It wasn't perfect. We still had arguments about dumb things, who left dishes in the sink, who forgot to buy oat milk. I still had moments where the fear crept in, quiet and sharp, whispering lies about not being enough. But now, when that voice came, I had another one to drown it out. His. Logan never tried to fix me. He just stayed. He listened. He chose me. Again and again. Some days were messy, awkward, raw. Other days were movie perfect. Kissing in the park, sharing fries at 2 a.m., him humming while folding laundry like some domestic fever dream. We were still figuring things out, still learning how to love each other out loud. But we were doing it. Together. One night, as we lay tangled on the couch, his feet cold against mine, his head on my shoulder, I found myself smiling at the ceiling like an idiot. "What?" he asked, half asleep. "Nothing," I said. "Everything." He looked up at me, eyes soft. "You okay?" I kissed his forehead. "Better than okay." Because love, I was learning, wasn't certainty. It wasn't clean lines or guarantees. It was choice, waking up every day and saying, yes, you, still you, always you. And maybe that was more powerful than anything else. That night at the party, when I felt his hand brush too close and froze like the world had tilted, I thought it was fear, but it wasn't. It was the feeling of everything changing, and this time it changed for the better.